Hello YouTube. I was having a conversation with my cousin last night about arranging solar power for her and her family. And the more I tried to explain and answer her questions, the more we both realized that my explanations were just going above her head, really. She didn't really understand the sort of technicalities I was trying to describe. Solar charge controllers and solar inverters and integration and balance and load and all this stuff. So we both agreed that I would do a video, a back to basics walkthrough for her and those like her who don't really understand the things we take for granted when we sort of start discussing these things. I decided to do a cartoon presentation of what it actually entails, and and I hope she finds it helpful. So, cousin, this is for you. So, in the beginning, there was a house, and the house had no light, and you can see the whole house is dark. There's nothing there. And then along came electricity. You can actually see electricity coming in from the grid into your distribution box at home, going directly to the house, and there the house is, all nice and bright and lit and colorful and happy. So a house with electricity is a happy house. And then everything was fine until this, a power cut. And that power cut has essentially thrown the house again into darkness, as you can see. So, but thankfully the power cut, as it happens in most countries, happens once a year and doesn't last for more than 5 minutes. So no big deal. There's always light and everyone's happy. But if you live in Africa, especially my side of Africa, and a lot of developing countries, to be fair, elsewhere than Africa, this is more often the situation than that. So what we have is that there's power cuts and there's power, and then there's power cuts, and then there's power. But there's more power cuts. In fact, we spend most of our time in darkness than we do with electricity, living our lives in a happy way and color. So, power cuts, and then there's power, and power cuts, until you get fed up and you say, right, I'm tired of darkness. I'm going to deal with this by providing my source of power by getting a genset, a generator. So like your grid power, the generator produces AC power, alternating current. So the power from the grid and the power from your gen and the power that most of the appliances in your house use through the plugs in the wall are all alternating current, and in Nigeria is 230 volts alternating current. In other places it might be different voltages, but alternating current is grid power. So you get generators to provide your power when you can't depend on the grid. And the generators we have here are mostly petrol and diesel. And we'll talk about generators later, but if this is your option and you're comfortable with this and this is your life, then you don't even need to watch this video any further. Just carry on using your generator and, wasting money and burning it and buying petrol and stuff. But if you were interested in alternatives to this kind of life in the face of lack of power on a chronic basis, then allow me to introduce you to deep cycle batteries. A deep cycle battery, as opposed to car batteries or truck batteries designed to produce a lot of power in short bursts. Deep cycle batteries provide power over a long period and are able to discharge very deeply and recover a lot better than ordinary batteries do. So deep cycle batteries are there and they store electrical energy so that when there is no grid power, we can use the electrical energy from that which is stored in the batteries. However, as you can see, batteries do not use alternating current. Batteries, the electricity in batteries and that kind of electricity is called DC, direct current, as opposed to AC, alternating current, that you get from generators and the grid. Let's talk about the differences between AC and DC. Alternating current is this first graphic here. You can see a very faint grey line, faint straight grey line, which is representing neutral. Alternating current basically swings up and down and up and down and up and down relative to 0. So alternating current has this kind of form. We're not going to go into detail, but that's alternating current. Direct current, on the other hand, does not switch direction. It is just direct relative. You can see the neutral there as well. Direct constant. It never crosses 0. So those are the differences between alternating current and direct current. Batteries use DC power, direct current. So if you can store your electricity here, then you can use it when the grid is out. Especially because of the invention of chargers that you can actually use to charge batteries. So you plug them in, they will take alternating current from the grid or from a generator from wherever, and use that by changing it to DC current and pumping this DC current into your batteries to charge them. And you can see you need more than one battery really if you're serious about powering your home with batteries. So you can use your charger to ensure that your batteries are fully charged, for when the grid then goes out. Okay. So the grid power, as you can see here, is supplying the house with AC electricity, as well as through the charger charging your batteries, which is DC. The charger uses AC, converts it to DC to charge the batteries. So you live in your life and you're charging your batteries on the side because you know that the grid is going to fail at any point in time. So that is a nice little thing to have on the side to save for a rainy day. But look, the grid power has gone. Your batteries were fully charged. From the slide before, batteries are fully charged. You've charged them. Grid power has now gone and the house is in darkness. What could be wrong? Well, what is wrong is that you have a charger that is charging your batteries, but how can you then use the power from your batteries? This is DC power. How can we use it for the house? So the house is in darkness. You have put power in, but there's no way of getting it back out. Thank goodness for the invention of, not charger now, invention of an inverter. An inverter is an electrical device that can take out DC power, electricity, from your battery and convert it to AC power that is therefore usable in the house. So with the invention of chargers and now inverters, we can see already that when there is grid power, we use AC current through the charger to pump DC electricity into the batteries to charge them, and keep all that battery reserve for later. And when the mains fail, we can then use the inverter now to suck energy out of these batteries, the DC energy, convert it to usable electricity as an AC electricity for the house. So you need the two. You need the charger turning AC to DC and putting it into the batteries, and you need the inverter taking out the DC from the battery, turning it back to AC so that you can use it in the house, because the house, is run by AC power. And another thing you can already notice now is that if the grid fails and therefore the charger stops, when does the inverter kick in? Is it going to be 5 minutes later when you're watching a program, which is a nuisance? One could almost do with something almost like an automatic switchover straight away, where the grid fails and instantaneously the inverter just takes over and you virtually don't notice any difference. Almost like an uninterrupted power supply situation. That would be good. And, you can start to think of, well, why would I want to buy a charger as well as buy an inverter? Because there are lots of chargers on the market and lots of inverters on the market, but is there a lot of things to buy? Will they fit each other? All these things. Why can't they just invent something, an electrical device that has both, together, and a little UPS to make sure that the whole thing is moving quite seamlessly? It would be a good idea if someone could do it. Look, yes, there are electrical devices that have an AC charger, an inverter, as well as a UPS functionality in them. In fact, most of the inverters that you see that we call inverters are actually inverter chargers, and they have UPS functionality. That is what is in them. Although you can get pure inverters and just pure chargers, there are many forms on the market, but a lot of the things that we are familiar with and we use are actually electrical gadgets that have all these things inside, all into one, which is a good thing. So that when mains fail, the charger stops charging and the inverter takes over instantaneously, fractions of a second. You will not notice the difference. So that's our happy house. The grid power is on, supplying AC directly from the utility company to the house, and the house is nice and bright. And it is also supplying the part of the AC electricity through the charger into DC to charge the batteries down there. So this is good, and you can see the batteries are full. We're cracking. The house is getting AC directly from the grid, and the batteries are full for later. And even when there is a power outage, you can see that instantaneously the charger stops working because there's no grid power. Because of the UPS functionality, instantaneously the inverter starts to pull power from the batteries, inverts it to AC, and sends it to the house as usable AC electricity. And you can see the house is lit. And this can go on, the inverter can work for hours and hours. In fact, it's been working now for several hours to the point where the batteries that were full have now drained and we're now getting to 50%. So things are getting a bit worrisome, but the house is nice and bright and everything is fine. And the power comes back. And then we go back to charging the batteries again. Inverter stops pulling power from the batteries. The charger takes over. AC house going directly to the house, also charging the batteries, and we've charged the batteries back to full again. And this is good until power goes out again, and power has gone out, and instantaneously the inverter starts pulling the power from the batteries, inverts it to from DC to AC and sends it to the house as usable AC energy. So this is something that can keep happening, because then you have power, batteries fully charged, and then you don't have power, you drain your batteries a bit, and then power returns, battery is fully charged, and you can see this is a good arrangement to have. And it seems to just, until, look, a prolonged power cut. In a prolonged power cut, say for a week or 10 days, because some transformer has blown in your neighborhood, or power lines are down in a storm, or the utility company doesn't have gas to power its turbines, or for whatever reasons, there's a prolonged power cut, you have used all the energy in your batteries, complete, to the point where the inverter has switched itself off, there's nothing else to pull. The inverter automatically switches itself off, no power going to the house, you're back in darkness. So in a prolonged power cut, this is a weakness of this arrangement. And under these circumstances, it will be understandable, and this is what most people do, prolonged power cuts, or if you're having prolonged power cuts on a regular basis, as we do in Africa, that you back to generators and you start using generators again. And look, generators are producing AC power from the generator to power the house, and and that's what you're doing. You're powering your house with generators. This is a small gen, so it doesn't have the capacity to power the house as well as charge your batteries via the charger. So this is just coasting and managing your life, and you've abandoned this whole setup. What a waste of batteries, what a waste of inverters. And the other danger here is that because your battery, as you can see, is down and down for a prolonged time, or regularly down and not charged back, because of it, your batteries will not last. In fact, under these conditions, my first set of batteries, I've said before in another video, lasted, I think, eight months. I killed those batteries in 8 months. And if you're regularly leaving your battery uncharged or partially charged, they will die. So what a waste of batteries and inverters and all that setup. And you're back to polluting your neighborhood and noise and petrol and just burning money away because of prolonged power cut. And it's not just a one-off. This is something that happens regularly. So you can see that this is a situation that is not good. It's not a good situation. So what do we do? You can get a bigger generator, most likely now a diesel one, will blow even more smoke to power your house, and yes, you will have additional energy to charge your batteries through the inverter. But this is not a sustainable arrangement, and this is the whole point of these videos I'm doing. But we understand why we have to do these things in the face of, very, very poor power infrastructure in the country, in whatever country it is you live in. This is the basis of all these videos, and this is sustainable energy. This particular slide here is showing a solar panel, photovoltaic solar panel, on the influence of solar energy from sun rays hitting the solar panel, which is made with a silicon-based technology that reacts to sun rays by producing electricity, DC electricity. Very important, not AC, DC. So your solar panel produces DC electricity using the sun as fuel. This is a generator. Not a petrol generator, not a gas propane generator, not a diesel generator. This is a solar generator producing direct current directly off the sun rays. So, faced with power cuts, yes, you can have the sun and solar panels, which you see you need more than one here to power a house. You need an array, and this is all based on calculation to produce direct current electricity that then can be used not with an AC mains charger, but with a DC solar charger to charge your batteries. And to charge your batteries in a sensible, intelligent way that it doesn't destroy the batteries, which is why it is called a charge controller. It charges your batteries, and it also controls how much charge it lets through to your batteries. That is a charge controller. So if you have a charge controller, a solar charge controller, this is an alternative source of charging for your batteries. And you can see that your batteries are charged and nice, and the inverter is pulling DC from the batteries, turning into AC and sending it to the house, even when there is no grid for a while. So this is the arrangement that you could have, especially if you already have an inverter charger in your house. So instead of using a generator as a backup system when there's prolonged grid outage and your batteries are totally flat, instead of rescuing everything with a generator, you could actually have this in place so that you never even get to a point where your batteries are totally depleted. Obviously, things have to be calculated and balanced based on the amount of load you are using. So that charge controller is separate from your inverter charger. It's an add-on. And when there is grid electricity, no problem. The grid electricity directly supplies the house. Your mains AC charger, alternating current charger, also gets mains electricity, turns it into DC to charge the battery, while your charge controller is continuing to charge your batteries from the solar panels, from the sun. So you can see your batteries now have the luxury of two different simultaneous sources of being charged. So it works well when there is no grid power, and it works well when there is grid power. Okay. Now, this is the future now. This here is the future, because there are now some electrical appliances that have your inverter, charger, UPS functionality, as well as an inbuilt charge controller. We're not going to go into the types of charge controllers because you can have different kinds of charge controllers, etc. But just suffice it to say that you can now have fully integrated inverters called solar inverters that have all this that you would find in any normal inverter charger with a UPS functionality, as well as an inbuilt charge controller, all connected intelligently through software, so that everything just works like clockwork. So when there's no grid, your charge controller takes the main responsibility of charging your batteries, and your inverter pulls electricity out, DC, converts it to AC, sends it to the house. And you wouldn't notice that there's power outage because it's got UPS functionality. This is the future now. A few years ago, you'd have to buy an inverter, then buy a charger, then buy a charge controller. It's all in one. This is the future. And when you have grid power, the inverter stops pulling, the charger starts pushing in from the grid, and your charge controller continues to work. It's all completely integrated solar inverters. That is the future. This is the type that I have, and I hope you appreciate the difference between using a fully integrated solar inverter to a system where you just have an add-on charge controller. Because the difference is here lies in the advantage of having a fully integrated solar inverter. In this slide here, you've got your regular standalone inverter charger and a standalone separate solar charge controller. So all this is an additional source of charging for your battery. That's all it is. That is all it is. Because under the conditions where there is no grid power, all the AC going into your house from the inverter is energy pulled from your battery. All this inverter knows to do is to pull energy from batteries, and all this charge controller knows to do is just to charge batteries. They don't, they're different, they're separate. But when you have a fully integrated system, and this is the beauty, yes, your inverter can pull from batteries, and yes, the inbuilt charge controller can charge batteries, but once your batteries are full, rather than this just switching off when your batteries are full and then the inverter continue to pull in from your battery, it directly sends the DC power through to your inverter and directly inverted as AC into your house, not bypassing the battery completely. So what you find is that during the day, typically shortly after 12 noon, if your system is very well designed and balanced, typically in West Africa, shortly between 12, sometimes 11:30 and 12:30, your batteries should be near enough full. So for the rest of the afternoon, the energy you are using in your house basically is energy directly from the sun. Your batteries are full, so that stops, and the inverter does not pull energy from your batteries. It just goes directly from the sun, and that's it. And this is precisely what I'm talking about. You can see your batteries are full, there's no grid power, there's lots of sun, because it's a completely integrated system working intelligently, all the components working intelligently with each other. The charge controller part sends all this DC from the sun directly to the inverter, which just sends it directly to your house. Batteries resting, nothing to do with batteries. This is the beauty of the system. And as long as the load in your house is reasonably okay and you don't turn on, I don't know, like electric irons or heavy consumers or anything, at that point in time, this is what happens. The sun just goes directly to the house. Batteries will rest until evening time when the sun starts to go down, then batteries come back in. So evening time, when the sun starts to go down, you will find that batteries start getting, drained in addition to the one directly coming from the sun. Or even during peak sun, if you turn on an iron, you might need to top up what is coming directly from the sun with a little from the stored battery. It is just a beautifully, this is the future. And some of these units now, the solar inverters, even have remote generator start. If it has to be an option, I don't know, maybe in a situation where there isn't sun, or in winter, or some parts of the world where they don't enjoy the kind of sun we do in Africa, you might want to have the option of the generator coming on at a set time, maybe when your batteries are almost flat because there's no sun. It just triggers the generator to come on remotely and charges the battery. Once the battery gets to a certain voltage, generator automatically switches off. So you can have these solar inverters, the systems, and that is the future. I hope that was helpful, and I would appreciate your comments on this amateurish cartoon production of mine. But I hope I've conveyed all the information, particularly for my cousin and those like her who want a very rudimentary, back to basics walkthrough of what it is to have an actual solar power system in the house using solar inverters. All right, thank you.